Good evening, good evening, good evening, Chatterhouse. How the hell are you all? Here we are once again at our new time, Wednesday night at 8:30. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Everybody is starting to come in on Facebook. YouTube usually takes a wee while. There's only a few usually comes in anyway. You're all very, very welcome, and we have a really special night for you tonight, folks. It's a bit of a sort of historical look back about how things used to be and what they're like today. And I'll tell you more in a minute. Right, okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do the roll call very, very quickly because Julie's in the background and I don't like to keep her in the background. She'll bait the bake off me, so she will. Right, so let's go to YouTube first. Our AJ Walker music is over on YouTube at the moment. There's someone else looking in on YouTube. Remember, folks, the rules of the Chatterhouse is I will not mention your name unless you say hello for me to say hello back. So let's have a joke and see who's in. I've got many sheets in front of me here. I don't know what I'm doing. So where's my comments? Where's the comments going? Oh, there's the comments. Okay. So let's see who's in. Straight through the door is my local historian herself. She'll be in her element tonight. Our Carrie Ferguson. Hello, our Carrie. Our Michelle McGrogan, Miss Chatterhouse is in as well. There's a whole lot of people watching, so I'm just going to go past to the people who have commented. And if one day I should become a singer with a Spanish bum who sings for women of great virtue. Our Jackie is in. Our Jackie McFarlane's in. David Simpson is in. He's saying swish, swish. Matt McKinley's in. Hello, our Matthew. Nice to see you. David Thompson is in. Nice to see you, David. Arwell's in. Arwell Mellon is in as well. Nice to see you, Arwell. Catherine Playfair's in. Hello, Stuart. Still can't comment on YouTube. I don't know what's wrong, Catherine. I really don't. We'll try to get you sorted out. I'll try to get it sorted out with you. Jackie saying hello to Stuart. Tracy saying, Tracy Wee-Wees is in. Our Tracy Wee-Wees is in. Our Tracy visited me today. She was up with me this morning and we're doing her and Illian. We're doing a dance. Check it out on Facebook and TikTok. David saying hello to you. Oh, and our Paula Campbell's in. Hello, our Paula. Right, that's all I can see so far. If anybody else comes in, I will say hello. Now, I've got much stuff here. I will set this here and I will keep an eye. Okay. Oh, and our Kellyan's in. He's just coming there on YouTube as well. Paula says she loved it. That was the dance. Right. Okay. Before we actually start tonight, I just want to remind you that we will be back on Monday night with our book club. The book club is finally starting, so that will be beginning on Monday night. The time has left my head. I think it's 8 o'clock. That's this Monday night. So like, I'm not going to mess about anymore because we have a load of stuff to get through tonight. So let's do a wee introduction before I bring Julie on. Right. Julie has a YouTube channel and it's called Exploring Scotland's History. History. She'll correct me anyway. And basically, it looks at all parts of Scotland. It looks at all different parts. Some beautiful scenery, some beautiful sights, and some very interesting stories as well. But tonight, we are going to look at a part of Scotland's history that you don't hear maybe discussed as often nowadays. And that is basically various different stories about witchcraft in history in Scotland. And all, we're going to learn more about that, maybe up into the witch trials and whatever. So what I'm going to do is, before I waffle and get it all wrong, I'm going to bring Julie forward. And just to let you know, I actually know Julie. Julie and I used to work together many years ago. Actually, a couple of times we used to work together in a few establishments in the past. But she has this fantastic YouTube channel, and as I say, it's absolutely amazing. And the videos are second to none. If anybody wants to check out the YouTube channel, there is a link already on the Facebook not the Facebook post, the YouTube post, but I will add all the links to the Facebook live afterwards. Hello, Paula. Love. So, without further ado, before I start stuttering and anything, I'm going to bring our Judy forward. I'm going to find her here. She's got that many pictures and videos and everything here. I can't find her. So, here she comes. Here she is, the one and only Judy. Here she comes.
Hello.
I waffled my way through that, didn't I?
That was quite a build-up. I feel very under pressure now.
No, but you're not, because I know, I basically know we have been organising this now for about 2 weeks. We've met up twice about this. We've discussed this. And we're like, so before we even get into any of it, Julie, how did you get into all this stuff? How did you get into? How did all this stuff enter your life? How did you get interested in it, and how did it all begin?
Well, it began when I was very young, living in Lisburn.
Yes.
Went to Wallace High School and started history to realise I was doing Henry VIII and I was doing the War of the Roses, and I wasn't doing any history associated with Northern Ireland or Ireland as a whole. It was all sort of English history we were learning. So it was probably after we left our first job together and I headed off to do other bits and pieces, I thought I would like to do an A-level in Irish history. Okay. I did my A-level in Irish history on the White Rock Road in Belfast. I was the only Protestant in the class. And it was quite an experience, but it was a good experience. And the guy that was teaching us Irish history was so passionate. The guy that was teaching us Irish poetry was Seamus Heady. He was coming up and he did his poetry with us, so it was a fantastic experience that I wouldn't otherwise have. I've always loved history. In P6, I went to Dudley's Castle up on the north coast, and I fell in love with the castle and its history and the folklore, especially the folklore. So, as you know, I've done various jobs, from taxi depot to carer to catering manager. Not much I haven't done. Moved to Scotland about 11, 12 years ago now.
So can I just stop you for 2 seconds, Julie? Yes, Julie will take questions. We're going to do a wee chat at the end, folks, for a few questions. The way we normally do, we'll do a few wee questions at the end. Sorry, Julie, go on ahead.
That's all right. Yeah, like I say, about 11, 12 years ago, I moved over to Scotland and thought, well, the history of Scotland and the history of Ireland is extremely intertwined. A lot of the stories are the same. A lot of them cross the Irish Sea, and a lot of them are just the same with different names. And I took this notion that, well, I enjoy my history. How can I share my history? So I started up the YouTube channel. Then COVID hit, and just as COVID was opening up again and we were allowed to go out, I did a couple of videos for the West Highland Museum, which is I live along the west coast of Scotland.
Well, actually, can I ask you, whereabouts in Scotland actually do you live?
Right. Well, I live north of a seaside town called Oban, which is the gateway to the Highlands and Islands. And I work about 50 miles north of there now. Like I say, when COVID started opening up, I did a couple of videos for the West Highland Museum in Fort William. And I started volunteering, and it was basically told there's a job coming up there. It might be an idea if you applied for it. I applied for it, and that's where I work, and it is my dream job.
And what actually do you do in the museum?
Well, my official title is I'm the Loo. Yes, right, LOO.
Okay. Right.
It's a learning and and outreach officer. So
Okay.
I take schools, I take community groups, I take them into the museum for immersive experiences. I take them out of the museum on field trips. I teach them in their classrooms, all sorts of different things. No 2 days are the same. This year, I've also started assisting the curator in the museum, so I'm getting hands on with the objects, which, while it makes me a wee bit nervous because some of the
Mm-hmm.
objects are really old and really
Yeah.
valuable, it's just an amazing experience. It took me a while to find my niche, but I found it.
And you know something? You can actually tell that you're loving it because you can see it. You can see it in
Yeah,
your eyes. You do
yeah.
enjoy it. Um,
I just That's great.
oh, somebody's just said here. Hold on. Will says the ferry goes from Oban once a day and passes Tobermory on the way, and just beside the lovely Isle of Carr is Terry, the most beautiful of all. What the hell's that all about, Julie?
Did he say Isle of Tiree?
Yeah,
Tirree, is
hold
it?
on. He says the ferry goes from Oban once a day and passes Tobermory.
Mm-hmm.
On the way, just beside the lovely Isle of Caw, is Tiree, the
Yeah.
most beautiful of all. Is that a wee saying or something? Is it? What the hell is there?
Tirree is the most beautiful island.
Is it?
Um,
Yeah,
the islands are beautiful.
yeah. And Carrie says nothing beats handling a historical object. Sorry, Julie, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just see Arwell, he comes out with these things and he surprises me, so I wasn't expecting. I was actually quite nice. I'm impressed, Arwell. All right, Julie. So what sort? So let's get into this wee topic that we're going to talk about. So
Yeah.
where would you like to begin? So let's start. Let's start with you. Start where you want to begin.
Well, I will start probably first of all explaining that if I suddenly take a coughing fit, don't worry about it.
Yes.
Stuart will maybe take one as well because we're both dying.
Yes.
I didn't know you could dose people
Absolutely.
online, but we've managed.
Uh huh. Oh, Will says that was from actually a wee
Oh, a
song
song
from the
about the
islands, and he
islands.
says, "Sorry, sir." No, well, because you're joining in, and
No,
that's the main thing. You're joining in. Right, Jay, go ahead there. Sorry to interrupt you.
no, that's all right. We'll start at the beginning. Um,
Start at the very beginning.
Indeed. Um, the Reformation was in
Okay.
around 1560, and
Yes.
things changed majorly then. They changed
Mm-hmm.
majorly in Ireland as much as they did in Scotland. Um, but obviously, the Presbyterian Church was established,
Mm-hmm.
and within 3 years, witchcraft was criminalised, and things like visiting sacred wells, which we'll see later on, and just really all the old ways and the old things that we would probably class as superstition now, but that was how people got through the day, got through the week, got through the month, and that was criminalised. Um, so you couldn't even consult with a witch. Stuart and I had been talking the other night, and I'd been saying my grandmother was a very strong Presbyterian, but if there was something wrong with her, if she had a wart or something, she would go to the gypsies for a wee charm, and
Mm-hmm.
that would have that once the Reformation kicked in, that would have been consorting with witchcraft. So
Okay.
my granny would have probably been up for the chop had she been in Scotland. Not so much in Ireland. We'll talk about that later on as well.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, the other thing was the pagan rituals before the Reformation. The church generally dealt with it, so people got a slap on the wrist and encouraged to go to church, and that was the end of it. But once the state took over, that's when the burnings could start,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Okay.
But to see a sort of overview of the old ways, starting with the healing well and going on to a story that I find particularly emotive when I read it. We do have the Munlochy Well and the Suddy Witch video that
Okay.
I made last summer. So
Okay. Would you like me to show that first, and then you can talk about it afterwards?
I think, yeah, because there's quite a lot in it. And
Okay.
I
All right,
did
folks. So
research it heavily.
yes, you did. So what we're going to do is, folks, we're going to play this video. These videos, by the way, are not long videos, so you're not sitting sleeping. Okay. Just to let you know, I will be playing it in large screen, and Julia and I will go small. So this is so refresh my memory again, Julie. This video is about the Munlochy Well and Suddy Witches.
The Munlochy Well was basically one of those old traditions that we are talking about. I'm nearly sure, I don't know whether I'm nearly sure there was a Clutie tree somewhere outside Belfast where people used to tie rags onto a tree. Um, I'm nearly sure it was sort of out towards the Giant's Ring. Somebody will remember where it's from and correct us here.
Okay.
But that was one of the things that would have been outlawed. You weren't allowed to visit a well. You weren't allowed to visit a healing well. You were expected to go to the church or whatever the attempted medicine would have been in those days. And also the Suddy Witches is a perfect example of people's perceptions and when they don't understand something, how horribly wrong it can go. So
Okay.
I think without
All right,
further
folks.
ado, you can throw that one up.
Oh, well, okay, folks. So sit back and relax and watch our Julie go for a wander with her lovely coloured hair. So here we go.
Today we are visiting an ancient Celtic site to learn something of the rituals and superstitions of our ancestors. Welcome to Exploring Scotland's History. This well is said to have existed since the times of St Boniface, which I do mention in a video on Rosemarkie. I will put that up on the end. Sick children would have been left at the well overnight if they were ill in the hope of a cure. A tad harsh in my reckoning, certainly a tad harsh by today's standards. The Reformation of 1560 really sounded the death knell for a lot of these sites, but this one crops up in a lot of our stories, and obviously today it's still used. Today we're hoping it's going to fix my knee. It was so bad. In 1581 there was actually an Act of Parliament that denied you visiting a holy well. A Clutie well is generally found in Scotland and Ireland. The Clutie refers to the rags that the ritual involves. It's also the name of the cloth that wraps a dumpling, the Clutie dumpling. This is the Clutie well at Munlochy. So why is a Clutie well significant? In the ancient times, and looking around us still today, it is said to be a healing well. I have a piece of cotton with me. It has to be cotton because it has to be a material that is going to degrade. And apparently the dipping of this in the well, followed by the ritual, will ensure that whatever part of you is ill should be cured as this starts breaking down in the weather on the tree. So the ritual, I'm going to do 3 laps of the well. Then we dip our Clutie in the water while splashing the water. I'm going to wring it out. We rub the part of our body that is healed. That's my knee. It's been giving me difficulty. Then we say a prayer. and then we tie it on a tree. So in a few months, if I'm skipping up and down the hills and climbing over castles, you'll know my knee was fixed. If I'm not, you'll know it didn't work. Let's go and tie it on the tree. A more disturbing tale comes from this area of Monlocky, and we are going to head a wee bit up the road to learn about the Suddy witches and the hell that they had to live through in these times. In the process of researching the Cludy Well, I ended up down a rabbit hole and started reading this book. I can highly recommend this book. I've read it cover to cover. Mr. Lowe has several books on Scottish history and various myths and that, and he really does make it accessible to everybody. But he put a story in it about the Suddy witches. And they come from up here. We're in Suddy Graveyard, where obviously the witches wouldn't be buried. But it's a fitting place to tell the story. It links to the Cludy Well and all that crazy superstition that used to happen during the Reformation and beyond. In 1699, this parish of Suddy was in a wee bit of a state. Crops had failed for 7 years. Worth mentioning in superstition and witchcraft, 7 was quite a significant number. But anyhow, they needed to, I suppose, apportion blame or explain what was happening. And I feel a witch story is coming on. I imagine that since the Cludy Well, just at the bottom of the road, the fact that it's still in existence, I would suggest that up here people were still using that Cludy Well for worship. But the Laird of Suddy, one Captain Mackenzie, he of course needed to explain to his folks what was going on, and he had the impression that one of the ladies who lived in the area was a witch, and her name was Margaret Provost. Himself and several of his servants headed up to the Provost house, set it on fire, knocked it down, and pretty much ruined where that lady had lived. Within days of this happening, one of the servants who had been responsible for the raising of the house suddenly started becoming ill and actually ended up double his size. He presumed filled with infection. Her son actually came forward and said that if she could be given new accommodation, then this crisis would be averted and people would start getting well. The minister of Suddy here, a Fraser, he got a complaint from Captain Mackenzie as well. Apparently the captain wasn't feeling so good, and of course it was apportioned to the Provost lady. But Mrs. Provost wasn't on her own. Margaret Bezick was the next victim of I Think You're a Witch. She had apparently been threatening towards Farmer, telling him that she would upturn his cart. A few days later his cart upturned. Nothing to do with poor driving, apparently. And then a few days later, his wife became ill. So here was another person in the limelight as a witch. This whole situation started escalating. There were stories of evil chickens and cattle randomly dying, and it was all apportioned to the witches. And we found a third one. Murroch McEnanach became the third accused. She had been giving off to a farmer, allegedly, because his cattle had been straying into her field and eating her meagre supply of food. So basically, his wife became ill and he became ill. So clearly that farmer headed off to Mackenzie, the captain, and Fraser, the minister down here, especially when he became deathly ill for 5 weeks, which actually disabled him. The bizarre way the events turned was that any illnesses that these witches were supposed to bestow on people suddenly disappeared when the Kirk accused them of being witches. They still stood trial for being a witch, of course. There are no records of what happened to them, though to be fair, Culloden Highland clearances were sort of all in the offing in the next sort of few decades, and a lot of records were completely destroyed at that stage. So like I say, these ladies won't be in this graveyard. I would imagine Captain Mackenzie and the Reverend Fraser will be here somewhere. But we need to look at the common sense aspect of a story like this as well. And this is why this book is actually really good, because Leonard goes into details of the factual things historically that are happening around people, around the environment, so that we can understand why things got out of hand and people were accused. He cites a volcano in Iceland had recently erupted, and obviously the ash and stuff that would be blown over in the wind and would fall in the rain would have an adverse effect on crops. If people weren't washing stuff properly, they would be taking that into their system and they would probably feel a bit bleh. And this is still happening today. Obviously, tar and sand that comes and covers cars, and if there is a volcano Iceland direction, we are going to feel the effects of it. But I don't think accusing 3 people of being witches and ending their lives is the way to deal with a volcano in Iceland. And that is the thing with superstition, and that is the thing with traditional tales. I find a lot of traditional tales there is a more sensible way of dealing with it. To be fair, we don't necessarily deal with things in a sensible manner today either. It really is very photogenic little graveyard. Oh my goodness, what's that? Oh wow. Yes. We have a little funeral aisle among the trees. Look at that cross. Wow. Here I was expecting Mackenzie's as Laird's, but as is the way in this area, it's more Matheson's. So that was the Clootie Well, and a wee story of, in my opinion, pretty unfair witch trials. Thank you to Leonard Lowe, who gave me the story. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and leave a comment. It really helps the channel grow. I would like to thank those who have thus far donated coffee money on my coffee page. It helps us get out to sites like this. Thank you very much. I'll put a link down below.
Okay, Julie, even though the stories were dark and there are horrible things that happened, that is one beautiful place. It is absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. It really, really is. So, you know what we're going to ask you, don't you? Did it help your knee?
Don't know. My knee comes and goes. Maybe I should visit the Clootie Well more often.
No, it's absolutely stunning.
What I would say,
Yeah.
a wee point on the video there, I mentioned Leonard Lowe, and his book.
Yes.
Um, I've quite a few of his books, but if anyone is over Edinburgh direction for a break or whatever, he actually has his own witchcraft museum over there.
Oh.
And it's quite an experience. Quite an experience.
Couple of people are saying, Tracy says it's really interesting, and Will says, I think this is lovely, especially this week with Burns Night, this Sunday night. And Tracy says, very informative and interesting. So they're all listening. They're all listening to you.
Good.
But Julie, can I ask you? Maybe I'm going to ask you this at the wrong stage of this,
Yeah.
and you're going to bait me. But I'm going to ask you this anyway. What sort of things were people doing to be accused of witchcraft? What sort of, do you want to talk about that now? Can I bring that in? What were people being accused of? But basically, what would they have done? Say, for instance, I lived then. What sort of things would I have done then to be accused of performing or acting with witchcraft?
Well, we would have you up for witchcraft because you read your cards, and that is
Right.
not. We've just had the Reformation. Presbyterianism is the big thing. You reading your cards is a big no-no. Everything was very staid. Why would you be accused of being a witch? It could be very basic things like your face didn't fit. Basic things like you had a disability. So you maybe looked slightly different to others. You had a disability that you maybe behaved and thought differently to others. You were wise. A lot of wise people ended up in the witch trials. I think it was people generally who lived on the edges of society. Once the Reformation kicked and everybody decided that they were going to be pious and follow the path that they had chosen, anyone who was nonconformist was for the chop, basically.
Especially sometimes if your face didn't fit, that was enough.
Yeah. King James King James was on the throne at the time. He was King James VI of Scotland and the first of England, and he just had a particular obsession with witch trials, and he encouraged them, and it was almost like a sort of a sick obsession. So if you didn't like somebody, you could just accuse them of witchcraft. That was horrific. It was pitting neighbour against neighbour. And like those Leonard Lowe books, in most of his stories, he will try and find something that is common sense to it. Like there was issues in Monlocky because obviously there was ash clouds coming down from Iceland. The 16th and the 17th century, when all these witchcraft trials were running, there was like a mini ice age in the northern hemisphere. So crops were failing. It was much colder. It was much wetter. There was a shorter season. So people were beginning to starve. People were feeling it, economically, and they needed a scapegoat. So Stuart, sitting over there very quietly, flipping, using his tarot cards, he was a perfect victim. And that is as simple it was.
I'd been the end of it. Will says that's me, right? Because he says I'm definitely not wise. No, but it's ridiculous, because as it says, you say, some of the reasons were absolutely just whatever,
and things like, if you were a strong, independent woman, you were not trusted. Another one that was a perfect excuse was if you were a midwife. If you were a midwife and you went and delivered a perfectly healthy baby, you were the hero of the village. If you were a wife, and the baby was delivered, and it wasn't a perfectly healthy baby. Before you knew it, you were in, you were
You're a
an
witch.
accused person. And I do go on later on to discuss once you would be interned as a witch as such, um, what methods were used to
Okay.
extricate stuff out of you. So it could be
So
pretty
it's gonna
scary
get
stuff.
It's gonna get gory, folks. It's just gonna warn you. So we are. It's gonna get gory. Okay, Julie. So what have you got for? So what would you like to cover next? Where we're going next?
Well, um, just 20 minutes north of me, we are in Glencoe. And
Yes.
Glencoe is a beautiful, beautiful part of the country. Again, not without its tragic stories. So I thought I would tell you one of my favourite stories from the
Okay.
area. And it would be the story of Carrick, who was the witch of Glencoe.
Okay.
Um, but if you want to throw up the first photograph, the Glencoe photograph, for those who maybe haven't seen Glencoe.
That's the first
But
one.
yeah, but Carrick, she was one of these strong, independent, wise women that we talk about. And she is best known really for trying to prevent one of the most tragic things in Scottish history, which was the massacre of Glencoe in 1692.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was a wipeout of a MacDonald family. There was 38 or so we know of killed just slightly further up the glen than in that photograph. Um, it was basically it was to calm down the Highlanders, the whole massacre of Glencoe, and get them to bend the knee to their new king, who was, from over Scotland, Ireland, and England at that stage. And the MacDonald family were killed under trust. They had soldiers in their house for a few weeks when the soldiers were given orders to turn on the McDonald's and kill anybody under the age of 70. So it is a tragic story. And if you want me to come back some night, Stuart, and tell you all properly about the massacre of Glencoe, I will.
So,
Um,
Julie, what actually is this in this photograph here? What are you
well,
thinking in there? What actually is that?
that is a modern um, build of what the houses would have looked like in
Mm-hmm.
Glencoe. I attended a few archaeological digs along there. You can go out and assist with the archaeology, and I had gone down with them, and it's very clear that they were sort of like a long house. It would have had turf sides, very small windows to keep the heat in. There would have been a fire in the centre of the room, but no chimney. The roof is made of heather woven, and the smoke just filters through the heather and back out. And the heather actually prevents things like the dreaded midges that are so well known in Scotland. It's a deterrent for the midges getting in. So that is actually on National Trust property, and they have
All
sort of
right.
built that to give people a wee bit of an idea of what
Okay.
Glencoe would have looked like in the days of Corrick the Witch. Um,
Kai Ferguson says here, I'd love to head to Glencoe. She says the massacre is horrifying. It really
yeah,
is horrifying.
it is. It's a pretty rough story. Um, but Corrick did try to prevent the massacre of Glencoe. She knew um, that was going to happen, and she approached McKean, who was the chief of the MacDonald clan, and said, "Look, you need to get out of here. This is not going to end well." But they didn't listen. And 120 government soldiers who'd been warmly welcomed into the MacDonald homes and had lived there for really nearly 2 weeks, were ordered to set upon the MacDonalds and leave nobody alive. There were those that
Mm.
did survive, that disappeared up into the hills. Some froze to death up in the hills. Some managed to survive. It was a hard time. But The story is that Corrick, the witch, on the morning of the massacre, came down into the village and found McKean in his bed, dead, because the soldiers had killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And it said that she lifted the sword that was lying beside the bed and took it to the loch beside the village, which is Loch Leven, and she threw the sword into the loch, and she declared that as long as the sword remained undisturbed by man, that no man from the glen would fall in battle. And this worked, despite real bloody battles, Culloden, a lot of men going to fight in Waterloo. None of them is recorded as being killed from the area.
Okay.
That was about to change, unfortunately. 1916, First World War is raging, and they were dredging Loch Linney. There was a couple of dredgers in so that they could get sort of bigger boats into Loch Linney, because it's quite a sheltered place and it would be harder to be spotted by the Luftwaffe. On the 30th of June, a worker on one of the dredgers was dredging away, found something in the loch and brought it into the local pub.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an old sword, thought to be McKean's sword.
Okay.
Now, this is 1916. Excuse me. So, obviously, Corrick had put the curse or the thing on the sword. It had been pulled out. The villagers were absolutely horrified. They took the sword off the man, threw it back in the loch, told him not to go anywhere near it. The next day, the Battle of the Somme kicked off, and there was 6 people killed in the Battle of the Somme, and none had been killed from the massacre of Glencoe right up to the Somme. Excuse me.
Hop it up there, Julie. Sick me. If I see what you're doing that, Will says Julie has a lovely tone. And I find this so interesting, and I definitely think we should do another night of this, definitely. And Tracy says about that wee house there, she says that looks really cozy. So there you go.
We have gone, like that one is it's basically a shell and there's a fire in it. When we were over on Harrison Lewis, which is some of the Hebrides, a couple of those islands, they have them set up like how people would have lived in them, sort of right from the 1800s to the 1970s, and they are really practical and really, really cozy. Fantastic wee places. But
okay,
story of Corrick's not over yet. Excuse me. She did have other predictions, but she would eventually pass on herself, and because of the work that she had put in to try and stop the Battle of Glencoe, they felt it fit that she should be buried with the MacDonald clan.
right.
Now, there is a massive clan island on Loch Leven, and it's called Eilean Monday. If you want to put up picture number 2.
Certainly.
It's a very unusual island. We headed over in the canoe at one stage, and all the headstones are Ballachulish slate from the slate mines, and they're a really unusual dark colour. It's a very emotive island. It has a couple of jetties round it, and one jetty would be for the MacDonald clan and one would be for the Stuart clan. I think the last person was buried there in the early 70s. But it's quite a fabulous island. Obviously McKean, who had been killed in the Glencoe massacre, he's on that island and he has quite a sizable tomb on it. And that's where they wanted to put Corrick when she passed away. So they got her, excuse the phrase, they got her boxed up and ready to go. They took her down to Lochside, and just as they were about to get into the boat, a massive storm kicked up. So they tried it the next day and the next day, and they had to give up. They realised they couldn't get Corrig over to the island. It was like the island didn't want her there. So that they buried her Lochside in an unmarked grave, and apparently no grass grew there. It's somewhere that we can't visit because in, I think it was the 1960s, they decided to build a big main road, and they started digging. And locals will tell you that they must have disturbed poor Corric's grave because there was a guy digging up at the side of the loch, starting his new road, and him and his digger were lifted and thrown into the loch, no apparent reason.
Oh
And
my God.
I wonder had they maybe disturbed her. But these wise women, fantastic to accuse people of witches, of being witches. She survived, thankfully, but she did have another thing that she left beyond death, and it was, she said, the narrows of the loch. If anyone ever built a bridge over the narrows of the loch, that Ballachulish and the surrounding area would end up underneath a devastating flood. Now, that was fine. In 1970, they started building a bridge, if you stick the number 3 up. It's called the Ballachulish Bridge. I have to say it's quite an impressive bridge. I quite like this bridge. I have a thing about bridges. It's one of the history things I'm quite into. But this bridge was built, and obviously there was her old warning that if the narrows were crossed, that things would go into a flood. But even in 1970, the engineers had a bit of respect for a witch that lived in the late 1690s and early 1700s, and they haven't finished the bridge.
Right.
And they've missed a bit of the bridge out. We haven't had a flood. To be fair, if you look at geology and that, we're not going to have a flood. But the bridge isn't finished, and if you want to put up that number 4. There's a missing bolt. The bridge was never finished. The engineers knew of the story of Corrig the witch and possibly didn't want to take that risk. We have checked the whole bridge from one side to the other, and that's the only bolt missing. And that's been done on purpose.
So basically,
so there's a story for
the bolt has been left because the bolt's not there. The bridge isn't technically finished. So in their heads, if that bolt was there, that's it finished, and this could come to that this flood would happen and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Right. By the way, folks, there's actually quite a lot of people watching on YouTube at the moment. If you want to say anything or anything, please feel free. The only thing is, if you subscribe, you can't comment for 20 minutes. That's the way it works on the channel, unfortunately. But you are all very, very welcome. Julie, I just want to read something out here. Tracy says, by the way, those photographs that you're showing there has beautiful scenery as well. Nick Well has asked me a question. I'm going to leave it to the end because I don't want to sidetrack you from what you're talking about.
Yes.
So,
well,
I
have the Facebook up. I'll take a wee note of Will's question.
You can see it there,
because that requires a conversation.
Right. Okay. So we'll take a note of that one and we'll answer that at the end.
Yeah.
So I'll take this photo down, will I? Yes.
Yes.
I got good at this. You should have a TV producer. I'm telling you there. Right. So where are we going next?
Well, say that's a story that I think because I live in the area, it's quite close to my heart, and the fact
that you realize how lucky you are having all this beautiful, as Tracy says, all this beautiful scenery. at your doorstep. It's unbelievable. And
I
such history as
yeah,
well.
I appreciate it every day. When I first moved to Scotland, I lived in Glasgow for a short while on the outskirts. Um, and then we moved to Greenock. Um, and I don't know what notion we took that we would move up into the Highlands. But Martin was working away. He was on the East Coast all week and would come home on a Friday. And he said, he says, when we come home, we're living just outside Oban in a wee place called Tynalt. He said, every time we come home, it's like we're coming on holiday
Mm.
because we drive out the bottom of our lane and it's just mountains and lochs everywhere we look. We do appreciate it. It's fabulous. Um, but let me think. Yes, the next story. Um, we've discussed three witches that we don't know what happened to the poor souls. We've discussed one who was held in a wee bit of esteem. And now we're going to discuss a male witch, a male who was accused of witchcraft.
A male,
Um,
a man.
a man.
Now, before
Um,
you actually get into that, did this happen often? Was it mainly women, or was there a lot of men as well accused of witchcraft, or was it mainly women that you're aware
well,
of?
I'm just looking up the years here, from 1563 to 1736, there were 2,500 people in Scotland executed for being witches.
Oh my God.
15% of them were men. So while it was a small percentage, there was still quite a few people.
Still quite a few people, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And where the men were concerned, there wasn't any more rhyme nor reason than anything else. If they didn't like the look of them and they said something that they didn't fancy, then they were in for it. But we're going to discuss one of the male witches, and I think if you can start off with the Eaglestone video, it's just a wee 2-minute video. It's one of his alleged prophecies, and we can have a wee look at that one.
Video 2, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, let's bring it up. Here we go. It's only 2 minutes, folks. Julie has kept it nice and short, so here we go.
Today I'm exploring Scotland's history, just taking a short dog walk up to the Eaglestone in Strathpeffer and tell you all about it. This is a Class 1 Pictish symbol. That means that it's a carving on an unshaped natural rock. It's thought that it dates back to the 400s to 500s. What do you think of it, Rex? Not much, clearly. We see a horseshoe shape with discs adorning it. Archaeologists interpret this not as a horseshoe, but possibly an arch or a rainbow. Below it is an eagle, wings folded. These stones obviously are Pictish, so it's really open to interpretation what their actual meaning would be. Local tales say the original site of the stone was at Flotterty Old Kirk, further down the valley. It was moved to mark Monroe fatalities after a battle in 1411 with the MacDonalds, where the Monroes were victorious. The Brahan Seer, a Scottish Nostradamus, predicted that if the stone fell 3 times, that boats could tie up against it. We're about the 30-metre contour, so if it falls 3 times, Dingwall is underwater. Perhaps that is why they have secured it in concrete. Supporters of...
Sorry, Julie, I'm just going to pause that for a minute. Look at that scenery. That is absolutely incredible. I wish we had something like that.
You see, well, you do, see if you go down to the Mourns, if you go out the back of the Mourns, it's like that. I think that the topography of Ireland and Scotland are quite similar, really.
Beautiful. So we'll carry on.
The Brahans here do believe that he predicted various other things that happened in his future and our past, including the clearances and the building of the Caledonian Canal. So that was the Eaglestone. Rex is now crying because a farmer has been traversing past us bringing sticks to his fire, and Rex thinks they're his. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and leave a comment. It really helps the channel grow. Until next time, thank you for watching.
And there you go.
Short
Absolutely
and sweet.
beautiful. According to the survey, Scottish witches, 85% that we know were women. Catherine says there's 2 big stories like that on... Wow. There's 2 big stones like that on the Ballybog Road, Seymour Hill. I just forgot the history of them. And Carrie says Rex is a good boy. Give him a stick.
Well, I do need to answer. I need to answer Kerry on that one, because our Rex, that's your spelling's not right. That's how normal Rexes are spelt, but our Rex is spelt WRECKS, because he nearly demolished the place when we got him.
Now, Carrie said something else there, and I don't understand what it is. She said something there about the Black Mackenzie question mark. What's that mean? Do you know what that means?
So just have to hold on.
Just how your horses are, Carrie Ferguson there. So what's that? Catherine says there's 2 big stones like that on the Ballybog Road, Seymour Hill. I just forgot the history. We'll have to look into that, are Julie?
Yeah,
right, Julie.
Those ones.
Carry on with our tour. Where are we going next?
Well, that was the start of the story of the Bran Seer. He had many prophecies.
Right.
He unfortunately was one of the 2,500 people who were a victim of the witch trials.
Right.
So I have a wee video there for you. The Bran Seer, Man or Myth. It basically has quite a lot of his prophecies. His demise, most importantly, his demise with people who were using him as a scapegoat and didn't like what he was saying. Perhaps the truth hurt, and how he came to a rather sticky end, literally.
Okay.
And if you want to put on his video,
just confirm that's video 3. Okay?
Yes, the Bran Seer.
Here we go.
We're at Chanonry Point. It's blowing a hoolie, but we...
Just Julia blew that bake off you up there.
It was horrific.
You can't just say something. In every single video, your hair's a different colour.
Yeah, no, it's a different colour tonight as well. Like a rainbow.
Sorry, but we shall carry on.
We are here to discuss someone who is well known in these parts and ask, was he a man or a myth? Welcome to Exploring Scotland's History. The Bran Seer, or Connucaw Dark Kenneth, was a person who allegedly was a seer and the predictor of the future around in the 17th century. Some believe he was fictional through the works of Alexander Mackenzie, who wrote much later about the Bran Seer when some of the prophecies had already come to pass. Some question the Bran Seer's actual existence. I'm going to tell you a story anyway. I'm going to break my neck already, it's great. He was thought to have come from Uig on the Isle of Lewis, and that was Seaforth land. He does appear to be much better known here on the Black Isle, but the Seaforths are involved here as well. The story goes that he prophesied through the little hole in a hagstone, and I'll show you one now. I have one. So this is a hagstone. The Bran seer apparently put this to his eye to predict the future. Give it a go. I'll give it a go. I predict rain. Oh look, there's the rain. Perhaps I'm a seer too. Hagstones will be found on the beach, and they're really sought after because they have healing powers, protective powers, and according to the Bran seer, he was predicting the future through one. His prophecies accurately predicted Culloden, the Highland clearances, the building of the Caledonian Canal, even our favourite politician, Margaret Thatcher. He also reportedly said that Scotland's Parliament would return once a man could walk from England to France without getting his feet wet. Well, the Scottish Parliament did return just shortly after the Channel Tunnel was built. He also had predictions about the Eaglestone in Strathpeffer. I'll put a video up here now about the Eaglestone and people's maybe superstitions that they made sure that his prediction can never come true now. So that was his life, but his death is much more interesting. We're going to head up a few hundred yards up the road and I will explain to you how the alleged Bran seer allegedly died.
Absolutely stunning, Julie. Look at that. It's absolutely stunning. Just to let you know, we've got somebody called Paul Duffy who's just come in there. He's called you Weather Lady there. And he just says hi. He says, I am coming in here from Canada. Paul, if that is your real name, you're very, very welcome. Very, very welcome.
It was far too windy down at Challery Point, so I came up to Fort Rose Cathedral. It's actually not much better. But there is a significance in finishing the Bran story here. The seer's predicted accuracy would eventually be his demise. He was working at the time in Bran Castle. His employer was the Earl of Seaforth. Now, the Earl of Seaforth was off on the jaunt to France, to Paris, and had left his wife behind. Lady Isabella asked the seer whether her husband was in good health. The seer became a bit cagey, didn't really want to answer that question, but she pushed and she pushed. Eventually he would say, yes, he is in absolutely fine health, but he is on his knees in front of a lady who's fairer than you. Well, as you can imagine, Lady Isabella just blew her stack, and she demanded the seer be bundled into a barrel of tar. We can see this isn't going to end well, can't we? A woman spurned. As he was dragged off to his unfortunate demise, he had one last prediction for Lady Isabella. He said, the Seaforth line will end in sorrow. He explained how the last of the Seaforths would be deaf and dumb. He would have 4 sons, but they would die young and not be able to carry on the name. In 1783, that prediction came right. Francis Humberston Mackenzie, he's buried in here. But as a child, he suffered from meningitis. He was left deaf and dumb. And he did sort of recover a wee bit of his speech. But in his later years, he rarely used the speech as he was mourning for his 4 sons who had died young. Said Lady Isabella had the bran sear head first in this barrel, filled with spikes and burnt alive. And they said that he was burnt alive on the spot. I'll show you, it's actually in the middle of the Shanley Point golf course, so I wasn't really going to risk a concussion to get really close to it. It is also said that the Earl of Seaforth himself had returned to the Black Isle on that day, and when he heard what Isabel might have been up to, he rushed so hard towards Shanley Point that he actually killed one of his horses. He kept going to the point, but alas, he was far too late. The deed had been done and the bran sear was no more. So, it's up to the individual whether you want to believe in his tale, whether Alexander Mackenzie made it up, whether the bran sear was real or not real. To be honest, I read this book, I've read it cover to cover. It's a fascinating book. Alexander Mackenzie has maybe made all this up. It's really good. The bran sear maybe existed. That's even better. The choice is yours. Thank you for watching Exploring Scotland's History. If you enjoy it, please.
I just cut it out because you're going to go into your subscription and all that there again.
I know, we have to do that.
I know. Julie, these videos, I'm going to say something, you know what I mean? They're absolutely incredible. You're walking along there, and I can tell that you have no script or anything there. You're just.
Well, I'll have.
You have it prepared.
I'll have bullet points just in case, because my biggest problem is I love graveyards. So I will go into a graveyard to look at Joe Brown's grave and get waylaid by all the other graves.
Absolutely.
So I do.
I think we all sort of do. I do that too. Even here, I'm going to the graveyard, I'm reading the graves, who the people are, and whatever, you know.
But
Carrie
I will
that
take.
Story was very fascinating. There, Carrie says, right. So where are we going to next, Julie? So are we going to move into the? Am I going to mess things up here now?
No, I've got a few wee odds and sods about. I thought obviously we discussed the bran sear there, and
yes.
it kind of reflected an era when there was fear of the occult and fear of anything that was different.
Yes.
And to be honest, it's worth discussing that. Yes, very few males were accused, but it's also worth looking at Ireland, and the fact that very few people were accused of witchcraft at all. Ireland had, over the same time period that Scotland had 2,500, like I say, and in about 140, 150 years, Ireland had 4. I think just the attitude of folk in Ireland, they were much more open to charms and wee bits of the occult and whatever was still kicking about. They were keeping their options open, I think, as well. But if you look at Germany in the same time period had 25,000 executions for witchcraft. 10. The Scotland figure's terrifying until you look at somewhere like Germany. And it was really messy. But obviously the bran sear was dealt with on a more sort of guerrilla scale. You know, it was sort of the family sorted him out. But those that were lifted by the state did not get an easy time. They weren't going to jail to await being burnt alive.
Yeah. Can I read something out here, if you don't mind?
Mm?
If you probably can see it there, Kai says
Yeah,
shooting egg of a graveyard too. If you haven't been to the one that you probably have in the cathedral when you're next over, see the young boy who's assassinated. Please do so. The original newspaper article is available in digital copy online. And then she says only one case in Ireland, Egan McGee, and it was
yeah,
predominantly Ulster Scots settlement.
yeah, yeah. I
Oh dear.
it was in 1711, though. Excuse me. As usual, it was quite outweighed. There was 8 women and one man accused of witchcraft in the Island McGee trials, and it's the only major
Unbelievable.
one. Um, but they were given a year in prison, and they were pilloried, so publicly shamed.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't put head first into a barrel with spikes and set alight. So it was very clear that Ireland had a sort of a wiser um, respect of people that were different. But like say, once these guys were captured, they would be tortured. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
to torture somebody, a warrant would be required,
Okay,
apparently.
folks, this might get a wee bit grim, so just warning yourselves.
Yes, it's not
So
going to be pleasant,
just
this
from this
bit.
gives you a wee warning, okay?
But often the torture was carried out illegally. There's a phrase, "waking the witch," which is basically when these women and men were tortured by sleep deprivation. Um, there was people employed as a job called a witch pricker,
Right.
um, and they would stab the witches to find anything, usually maybe a blemish or a mole or a scar, the mark of the witch. If they didn't feel pain, if they were being pricked, they had the mark of the witch. Um, and obviously they were being tortured, and these confessions were getting battered and
Mm.
poked out of them. Um, and they were usually dropping other people's names in. They were under so much pressure. So it started this snowball effect where 3 women would be lifted because they thought they were witches, and before they knew it, there was 20 of them all standing in the dock ready, for their punishment. And it was just a horrible snowball effect when people didn't know what was going on properly. Um, not good times, not good times at
No,
all.
no.
But if you want, we could sort of move on to the last trials.
We'll go to the last trials, and then there's just one more thing after that I want to talk to you about, and that was, I'll talk about that in a minute. So we'll go to the last trials first. The last
Well,
trials.
um, the last trials. I have a very short video again. Um, it's called The Witch's Stone, and I recorded it. It was sort of coming on dark, and despite the fact that this place, it's a stone on a main road in front of a police station, and it was a busy road, but that just standing at that stone, it it was really quite emotional to stand at that stone. But if you want to
Let's have
run
a look. Let's have a look.
today, we are outside Forres Police Station, and here we can learn about the Clooney Hill Witch's Stone. Welcome to Exploring Scotland's History. As you can see, the stone is cracked. We will discuss this later. The plaque reads, "From Clooney Hill, witches were rolled in stout barrels through which spikes were driven. Where the barrels stopped, they were burned with their mangled contents. This stone marks the site of one such burning." Local legend says the witch in question was burned for being one of the 3 who bewitched King Duncan in 1040 AD. In Shakespeare's play, only Hecate, the leader of the coven, is mentioned in local legend. We are unsure who is being referred to. Historians now believe the stone originates from the witches' trials that sprung up over Scotland post-Reformation. Scotland was quite prolific in this matter. passing the Scottish Witchcraft Act of 1563, which outlawed practising witchcraft or even consulting with them. The punishment, of course, was death. Some estimates are that more than 4,000 alleged witches were tried. But who were these victims? They were on the whole women. They were mainly healers, herbalists and midwives whose services were welcomed until something would go wrong. Then it would be presumed the ill person had been cursed and the healer would be accused of witchcraft. Many of the witches were folk who lived on the fringes of society, hermits, those with physical or mental disabilities. In fact, the last accused witch to be executed in Scotland was Janet Horne, allegedly in 1727. Her headstone, however, says 1722. She was showing signs of senility and her daughter had deformed hands and feet. She was tarred and burned at the stake due to the crazy accusations from her neighbours that she had used her daughter as a pony to ride to the devil. Once accused, often the outcome was death. There was rarely a reprieve. Janet's daughter apparently managed to escape. The Witchcraft Act was eventually thrown out in 1746. But back to the split stone. Legend says the stone was split in three and someone took a piece to use on their house. They became ill with a fever as soon as they moved in. It was assumed the stone held a curse. It was returned and the abode was demolished. Another local tale is that the stone was broken when a witch, attempting to steal the stone, dropped it when flying away. In Fraser's magazine for Town and Country in 1940, it was recorded that the cursed witch's stone was responsible for many fires breaking out when the hill had dense forestry. Truth or legend, folk in the area respected the stone enough to leave it in its place and even swerve the wall around it. Thankfully, things have moved on and there is much more acceptance of those who choose or happen to be different. So that was the Witch's Stone. If you enjoyed the video, please like.
And Julie, basically, the bottom line is a lot of this is because people did choose to be different, people wanted to be different. And just this society in those days didn't understand exactly what was going on and just accused them of everything. As you say, there was people there with disabilities. There was people there who generally were ill in certain ways. They just, their faces didn't fit as well. And maybe they were too outspoken for their own good. Maybe they were putting their neb in where they shouldn't have put their nose in. And that was unacceptable. And they got blasted for it. It's awful.
No.
Absolutely awful.
That's
Absolutely awful.
I see Kerry has made a comment there, 1722 was quite late. That was the last one, except the old Witchcraft Act was regurgitated in our last story, and that was in the 1900s.
Okay.
But yeah.
Now there's two more things I want to squeeze in here very quickly because I see the numbers are starting to drop a wee bit because people's attention spans are like. What I want to say is let's talk about very quickly. Let's talk about Helen Duncan.
Yes.
Tell me a bit about Helen Duncan. Helen Duncan
was known as Hellish Nell.
Hellish
Nell.
Okay.
She was born a Presbyterian over in the east coast of Scotland. As a child, she used to scare the other kids for her prophecies. Probably want to put a wee picture of our Helen up. Delightful.
Lovely person.
Yeah.
So who was she, Cara? Sorry, not Cara, I mean Julie. Who was she?
Well, she, in 1926, she started offering seances. She apparently would contact the dead people through ectoplasm from her mouth. Now,
is that what that's supposed to be coming out of her mouth there?
Apparently so, yes.
Right, okay.
It turned out that the ectoplasm was actually cheesecloth, egg white, and bog roll. and
That's
she used
desperate.
to ingest it all before a seance and then regurgitate it up on demand. Um, in 1933, she was fined £10, which is a fair amount of money in 1933. Um, Both her and her husband for these fraudulent seances, allegedly.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he was helping her out as well. But one of the seances that sort of changed her story a wee bit. In 1941, she was conducting a seance in the south of England in Portsmouth.
Yes.
Um, and she spoke to a dead sailor who informed her that his ship, the HMS Barnum, had been sunk off the coast of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the sinking of this ship wasn't actually released to the public until months later. Obviously, it was the Second World War, and they felt this happened quite a lot in the Second World War. There would be a ship bombed, whether it was friendly fire or the Germans had bombed it, they wouldn't necessarily release the information because it was considered poor propaganda to let the Jerrys know that we were sinking all over the place.
Yes.
So
Pardon me.
this seance, you could think, well, maybe there was a certain amount of truth to it then,
Mm-hmm.
possibly.
Possibly. It's happened before.
But while the sinking of the ship wouldn't have been released to the public, a certain amount of relatives would have been informed that the ship had gone down. We don't know whether it's true or not. But
Mm-hmm.
the Ministry of Economic Warfare had their ears pricked at this. And they arrested her under the Vagrancy Act, but then slapped 7 other charges on her. I'm just going to read them out. She was accused of contravening the Witchcraft Act with fraudulent spiritual activity, obtaining money under false pretenses, and various public mischief offences. She got 9 months in jail for it. And for them to pull out the 1735 Witchcraft Act after the devastation it had caused, I think was really just quite bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
So once she was released, she promised she wouldn't conduct any more seances, but she was lifted for conducting seances in 1956 again. Um, she died later that year. Those that do believe everything that she did say that the police had barged into that 1956 seance and she had to take the ectoplasm back down, and that's what killed her. But I think she'd been, to all intents and purposes, she'd been ill for quite some time before she died. But what I would say is that she did have a hand in the eventual and complete repeal of the witchcraft law because of the trauma she had to go through, during the Second World War and that. So she's truly the last witch, hopefully, truly the last witch, because they did try her under that law, um, and obviously because of these sort of things historically, the Scottish government gave people pardons in modern
This
times.
is what I was going to ask you, because I didn't know anything about this. I knew, by the way, Tracy says she looks strange there. But, this is what I honestly didn't know. This was in the Nicholas Sturgeon days, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So what actually happened? What actually did they do?
Well, there was lots of groups that empower women, and obviously over 80% of those accused and executed were women. And the First Minister, Nicholas Sturgeon, took the polls and the requests on board and actually issued a formal apology on International Women's Day. And what she said was, and I don't want to misquote her, don't want to end up in jail as a witch. When women couldn't even speak as witnesses in a courtroom, men allowed them to be accused and killed because they were poor, different, or vulnerable. And I think that really sums up the whole witchcraft
Unbelievable.
trials.
What
I
year
think
was that,
it's.
Julie? When was that? Can you know when that
I,
was?
I want to say it was 2022.
Okay.
I think I would need to check that
It's
one.
very recent then.
Yeah,
Very, very
yeah.
recent.
Well, there was a lot of pressure um, on them,
Oh
and I
my
think it was a
God.
decent. The fact that they did it on International Women's Day, I think, meant a
Yeah.
lot to folk that it was the early 1700s. People are tracing back their ancestry and finding out that their great 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 granny was burnt in a barrel of tar. I think it's important that
Okay. A couple
people
of things.
face up
Yeah.
to it.
A couple of things has come up here, and I just knocked them off. Can you see them there, Julie? What Carrie said there?
Yes,
Uh,
Kerry's talking about the Witches of Scotland campaign and the Witches of Scotland tartan.
mm-hmm.
Um, my personal level, my favourite tartan is the Pride of Scotland tartan, and that's because it's got nice blues but purples. And my hair changes colour a lot, but it usually comes back to purple.
And then it says here, and Will says, my sister-in-law classes herself as a white witch. Now, Will asked a question earlier on there, Julie.
Yes, he
Have
did.
you ever, what was it, have you ever been where? Because you wrote it down there. What
Yeah,
was it?
have I ever been to the fairy pools on the Isle of Skye?
And what is that? What is this?
Well, they are supposed to be um, blessed pools, magical
Mm-hmm.
pools. Um, we went to Skye many years ago before I started YouTube. The midges are about that size, which
Oh
is
my
about
God.
one of the off-putting things. The thing with Skye is it has so much tourism that
Okay.
it is bunged. Places like the fairy pools we haven't been to because we drove past the car park and it was too peoply.
Right.
We quite like living in the fringes of society. We don't care what we're going to be accused of. And Skye it's just so touristy that it's
Okay. All
so
right, folks.
no,
Yeah,
we haven't been.
no, you haven't been. Is there anybody who wants to ask Julie anything before we finish tonight? Is there anybody who wants to ask a quick question? But Julie, while somebody is maybe typing something up here, one question, the final question from me tonight is, with your YouTube channel and through your experiences of history and where you've been and what you've done so far, is there anywhere you would like to go to that you haven't been? Obviously, there's probably a load like, but is there anywhere that would stand out where you really fascinates you, where you haven't been and explored yet and looked into?
Sorry, I just want to answer
Okay,
Kerry's.
right.
Yes, the campaign was launched on International Women's Day on 2020, but the pardon was given on International Women's Day in 2022. I just checked that one there. Where would I want to go?
While you're doing that, Paul's just said supper here is 6 p.m. We'll be back. We're just about to finish, Paul. So we are, but thank you so much for coming in. I hope you really, really enjoyed it. We are just about to finish.
Yeah.
And there's Carrie's just saying, other than witches, is there any other particular Scottish historic folklore you're drawn to?
I like all folklore. Um, Folklore in Scotland, a lot of it, there's various beasties and sea monsters and things that lurk in castles. There's a lot of folklore attached with armless pipers and grey ladies and white ladies and green ladies, and I do love all of it. I love the history of a place and I love the facts about a place. But if there's a ghost story or a wee bit of folklore, I like to bring it in because it's part of the
Yes,
social history. You know,
absolutely.
some people would be, oh, what are you telling that ghost story for? That meant something to, people years back. There was a reason for that. I actually got a few bad comments. I had done a graveyard, and one of the graves had a big metal frame over it, and um, it was when there was grave robbing. Burke and Hare were taking bodies out of graves and selling it to the medical schools when they were starting up in Edinburgh. So this was a rich guy who'd caged over the grave, but locals would have said to their kids, "That's the vampire's grave. You get into the house before it gets dark, because the vampire's bottom lives in that grave because it was caged off." And people are like, "Why are you bringing that up?" Because it's part of social history.
It's part of that. Yeah, it's all part
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
Absolutely. Um, Paul says, "Love." I'll just bring this up. I keep forgetting I can do this on YouTube. Paul says, "Love the stories. Thanks. Have a good rest of the night. I always wanted to go to Scotland." I just remind you that Paul is coming in from Canada tonight. You're very
Yep.
welcome, Paul.
Well, yes,
Very
you're
welcome.
very welcome. And I have quite a few videos on the YouTube channel. Stuart will leave a
I'm gonna
link to
I-
it.
I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Carrie says the Kelpies fascinate me, and the ghost
Yes.
stories of Mary Queen of Scots, especially the one where she's allegedly ran over the lock to what? Ruin over the
Yes.
lock to escape her
Escape or
captivity.
captivity. You see, the thing with Mary, Queen of Scots,
Yes.
I think I've been to about 200 places. Mary, Queen of Scots haunts them all. Um, and she must be the most prolific ghost in Scotland, because she haunts nearly every
Everywhere.
castle in Scotland.
Oh, she's going to keep her
She gets
busy.
around as Mary, Queen of Scots.
Carrie says also Julie, thank you for tonight. She loved every second of it. And Tracy's saying hello to Maria, but she's also saying, Julie, thank you. It was so interesting. Will
Oh,
Millen
there's
says,
he's
I
got the
have.
Kelpies tattooed.
He's Oh, I will, dear. I will surprise you, dear. Well,
Yes.
Julie, if anybody doesn't know, Julie's YouTube channel, I will put a link. There is a link on the YouTube post for this video already. Just hit it and it'll take you to the channel. But what, Julie, if you even wanted to go in yourself and stick the links up in there, you're more welcome to. You're a
Yep.
member of the group. You can
And
do
if
it.
there's any
Anything.
questions that we haven't got round to, I'll skate through YouTube and Facebook and have a
Yeah,
wee look.
absolutely. You know what I mean? Because you can actually go in and put So, Julie's YouTube channel is called At Exploring Scotland's Histories. Am I right? History or histories?
Just exploring Scotland's history.
Yes. At
That's
Exploring
YouTube,
Scotland's.
Facebook,
That's
and
YouTube. And
Instagram.
it's all the same no matter where you go. And you know what I mean? If check them out. I just want to say most of those videos that Julie does, they're all done on her phone. They're not done. Is that right? Didn't you tell me that
Yeah.
most of your videos are done?
If Martin's out with me, he'll get a wee bit of footage of me walking about. And that's usually with a half decent camera. But I have a Samsung and I film it all myself. I have some decent
Unbelievable.
microphones and I have a decent editing suite, and I love doing it.
We all love an edit. But Julie, thank you for joining me today. Will says, get yourself a what's he say there? Get yourself a Cardini.
Oh, the Cardanon, in Fife. Yes, well, the East Coast is somewhere I haven't overly explored. I think because I work and I live on the West Coast, it's easier to work about the West Coast. But I have been up in the Northeast. Probably the next video that I'm releasing on YouTube is it's more of a vloggy one. We stayed in a Victorian chalet. It's more like a shack. It was -4 degrees and there was
Oh
no
my God.
electricity because it was properly Victorian. But it's sort of, do you want to be a Victorian? Quite an interesting experience. My answer would be no.
So for more information, go to Julie's YouTube channel. All the links is going to be, as I say, the link's already on YouTube on this post, but we will put them on the Facebook post. But get in quick because these guys only stay on Facebook for 30 days before they delete them. For some reason, they've started doing this now. But if you do need any information, you can contact Julie or me, or I can contact or whatever.
Yeah.
There's our
And
Maria.
everybody should be subscribed. I'm saying
Yes.
subscribe to my channel. You need to subscribe to Stuart's channel on
I'm
YouTube as
actually
well. It
just
doesn't
about.
cost you anything. It's
No,
free and
it
it's
scares
easy.
the life out of everybody, Julie. They hear this word subscription and scares the life out of them. Because I am just about to do this because you just beat me to it. Anybody on YouTube that is watching tonight, or anybody on Facebook who doesn't subscribe to the Chatterhouse, is at Chatterhouse55, and all you have to do is this. Hit the notification bell. Just like that. Hit the notification bell. It means every time there's a video goes up, you are notified. All the lives, you're notified. There's reaction music videos as well. There's other stuff comes up. There's cases that I do up close. There's interviews with pop artists. There's everything goes on the Chatterhouse YouTube channel. But Julie, once again, thank you very much.
No problem. I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I certainly sleep tonight.
And I think maybe soon, sometime we will have you back, and we'll go to another. We'll do something maybe a bit different.
Yeah.
In the future, if you don't mind. It was very enjoyable. You know what you're talking about, and and I must admit, folks, I don't know if any of you know this. Julia has been the most organised person that I've ever had on the Chatterhouse, or even the Natterhouse when we used to be the Natterhouse, because some people come in here and they say nothing, and I'm running around doing all the stuff and photographs, but Julie had it all. I have sheets, videos, everything, all. Julie sent me them all. I had to do very, very little. So Julie, thank you so much. Get Julie back for more Scottish history, our Carrie says. Well, look, folks, thanks very much for joining us tonight in the Chatterhouse. I know it's a wee bit of a longer one tonight, but sure, what else we'll be doing is pissing outside. Sure, what else? By the way, don't forget, we're back on Monday night. I think it's 8 p.m. for the introduction to our book club. That's this Monday night. He's just come in, he's standing here, he's dancing here. And it's this Monday night at 8 p.m. and I will reveal what the book is going to be. So once again, thanks for joining us tonight. See you all soon. Look after yourselves and good night.